on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS value picks for this week's Wyndham Championship. Excited to hop into some of the dumpster diving plays of the week. Our diamonds in the rough down low, priced $8,000 and below on Draftkings, to give you an idea of some of the plays I'm using to get some salary flexibility and perhaps in a few cases some much needed ownership leverage. In this sort of field where almost any type of skill set can take home the trophy, trying to take guys that are being a little bit overlooked but also give you that much needed flexibility up top are going to be absolutely key. And last week, we hit the nuts here on the channel with a Taylor Pendrick, somebody I was extremely bullish on, and even at 15% ownership, I still got 3 or 4x the field, upwards of 40-50% ownership in a few of the contests that I entered, and on top of that, had an outright bet. So obviously, ended up falling just short to Tony Finau, which, first off, hats off to him winning 2 weeks in a row. But with that type of performance, it opened up a ton of the GPPs for us. When you have that nuts play in the 7K range, even if you use somebody like a Cantlay and a Cameron Young rather than a Tony Finau in the large field GPPs, I was still able to do quite well myself. So, core picks going to be extremely important, but arguably even more important is trying to find these diamonds in the rough. So that is the idea with this video, to try and give you some of those high upside plays that might end up cracking the slate. So we're going to start this thing off here with Mark Hubbard at $7,900. Now, Mark Hubbard, somebody I faded last week and really was opportunistic because it was his first missed cut in 4 months. So obviously we picked a good week to have 0% exposure, but hopefully that keeps his ownership a little bit lower. We can get something in that 12 to 15% range this time around, because this golf course specifically is a great course fit for Mark Hubbard. Now at the Rocket Mortgage Classic, the main thing I was worried about was first off the field strength, which you're dealing with a almost identically strong field, so I don't feel the greatest about it even at $7,900. But more importantly, it was about the course fit. There at the Detroit Golf Club, it's a little bit more of a bomb and gouge type of affair, and I think when we look at the leaderboard, that would certainly have played out this time around. Whereas, here at the Wyndham Championship, it is all about that precision plotter type of approach. We are looking to hit a bunch of fairways, lean into some solid short iron and wedge play, and hopefully make putts in bunches. And Mark Hubbard does all three of those things, the off the tee accuracy, the approach play with the shorter clubs, and also the putting in bunches around Sedgefield Country Club. So I'm expecting him to have a bounce back week in bunches, and the recent form has been there. Like I said, outside of last week, has been an absolute machine. You're looking at 2 top 5s in a row at the alternate field events, which, much weaker fields than what we're going to get this week, but still takes a quite solid week to go out there and finish top 5, regardless of what field you're in. Top 15 at the John Deere, obviously had made cuts all the way until March before that. So you're looking at an extremely consistent player that in 2 to 3 maxes, single entries, I would be more than willing to get to. But even in large field GPPs, given just how well he's putted here over the last few years, in fact, averaging over 2 shots gained putting per round at this golf course, I expect him to go out there and perhaps even crack the top 10, which at $7,900 would be more than enough. And obviously, if he gets up there towards the top 5, would be somebody you probably absolutely have to have for the optimal lineup this week. So I like the fact that the model likes him. A lot of that is due to the alternate field events, obviously skewing some of the shots gained metrics quite a bit there. But in general, Mark Hubbard, a solid player, somebody who, we can count on to make cuts on the PGA Tour, regardless of field strength. And at $7,900 in a field that's maybe a little bit weaker than most on the PGA Tour, it's not a super weak field, right? It's not an alternate level field where he's going to finish there in the top 3 to 5 almost every single time. But I still think he has a top 25 type of floor in this type of a field, if not something a little bit higher, if he gets that putter really working. Next up, we've got Sebastian Munoz, who is going to be a lot lower owned than a Mark Hubbard. Now, Sebastian Munoz will generally get some attention because of his skill set. He's an extremely aggressive player, somebody who's not afraid at all to go out there and take aim at pins. And the reason why people like playing him is for that upside, right? To try and capture that first round leader type of performance that he seemingly puts up a lot more than most. But what I really like about him here is that the off the tee play is really what gets him into trouble, and he shouldn't have to hit driver here at all. In fact, I think there's a legitimate possibility that he just doesn't put driver in the bag. I mean, Henrik Stenson did that when he won here back in the day, and somebody like Sebastian Munoz, just taking it out of his arsenal would probably do a lot more for him than it would actually taking away from him not having that club. And there's only 2 par 5s on property, and for somebody of his length, they will still be more than reachable with a 3-wood off the tee, and then a 3-wood off of that fairway in, if not something even less because of how long he is off the tee. Really what I like about Sebastian Munoz, and the shots gained metrics haven't really bared this out over the last 24 measured rounds. So we'll take a look at a few sample sizes here, but over the last 24 rounds, right, it's mostly been the off the tee play and the around the green play. But what Sebastian Munoz is known for, particularly when he's going out there and giving us those ceiling performances, is first off just absolutely being dialed in with his wedges, with those long irons. Somebody who can hit it in there to 4 and 5 feet just time and time again for us. But more than that, he can get nuclear hot with the putter. And of late, he's kind of been average in both categories. So I don't expect him to be all that popular because, when he's gaining like 3/4 of a stroke per round on approach, he's mega chalk. He's played in like 15 to 20% of lineups. I at least, early here on a Tuesday, expect him to be owned in maybe close to like 7 to 10% at the very most. And at that type of ownership level, I'm going to be well over the field because from a longer term sample size, and this really hasn't been a favorable, at least a great one for Sebastian Munoz. I mean, look at this. Gaining with the putter, gaining with approach. He's gaining off the tee like we're used to seeing. Around the green goes back to a negative. That's why I said it was perhaps a little bit surprising that he was gaining so much around the green of late. Also, the fact that he wasn't gaining with the approach play and putter. But from a long-term sample size, he really seems to be coming into a new level with his game. He's been much more consistent than we've seen on tour. I mean, in the past, he was somebody who was either missing the cut every single week or finishing in the top 10 or top 25. Now it's more of a floor of making a cut, posting like a 50th or 60th place finish when he doesn't really have his best stuff, or going out there and contending when he has it there with the approach play and the putting. So I like that type of volatility. He's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to how safe of a play he is, as to somebody like a Mark Hubbard, who's going to be extremely consistent, go out there and grind a bunch of made cuts for us. Munoz has a lot more volatility. Now, it's not quite as bad of late, like I was saying, but he also has a lot more top-end upside. I mean, Sebastian Munoz can very well go out there and win this golf tournament, right? If he goes out there and he's nuclear hot with the irons for just 1 or 2 days, we know that on Bermuda grass, he's maybe not the best putter on tour, but we've seen him have more than enough ceiling performances to give us that glimmer of hope. So I like him this week. I think he's going to be relatively low-owned. And in terms of upside, I mean, maybe from the median projection standpoint, not the best play, right? You can see a 8.9x value in terms of his points per dollar, right? Somebody like a Mark Hubbard, who's a little bit more consistent, is closer to a 9.5 point per dollar projection. But from the top end upside, right? Munoz has a legit 120, 130 point ceiling, whereas Mark Hubbard probably has like 110, 115 point ceiling if he ends up winning the golf tournament. Moving down a little bit further, we've got ourselves Brendan Todd at $7,500, and another accuracy specialist, that plotter type, kind of similar to a Mark Hubbard who's going to hit a bunch of fairways. The approach play has been really decent of late, which is, something we'll talk about here in a second. But more than anything, I mean, this guy is an absolute banshee on the Bermuda grass surface. And of late, he's been gaining a ton of strokes putting off of his preferred surface. So, on bent grass over the last few months, Brendan Todd is gaining 0.88 shots per round with the putting, which is just outrageous for Brendan Todd, well over his baseline on that surface. But more than anything, now we get him on Bermuda grass, a surface that historically has been by far his most successful surface. So, if anything, he might actually improve on that performance that we've seen over the last 24 rounds. But if you take a look at the last 50 measured rounds, you'll get an idea for why I'm a little bit more excited to play him, because it hasn't all been the putter. And this is over a larger sample size, right? So, in fact, if anything, we'd expect a little bit more volatility here, but it's been the opposite, right? He's gaining on approach, gaining around the green. The putter has still been one of the best, if not the best in this field. They're at right around 0.7 shots gained putting per round, but the off the tee play has always been a problem, right? Losing a little bit over a 1/4 of a stroke per round over his last 50 measured rounds. Over his last 24, it hasn't been quite as bad, mostly because they're playing shorter golf courses, and that's the real X factor this week, is obviously the putting is going to be the real weapon, the real X factor when it comes to a Brendan Todd. You need him to gain a bunch of strokes on the greens, but at a short golf course, he's going to hit almost every single fairway and could legitimately gain 3 or 4 strokes to the field with his off the tee play. There isn't going to be players bombing it out there 300, 320 yards on every single hole. So that 290, 300 yard drive that Brendan Todd can almost just pick a spot on the fairway and place it there is going to be the absolute nuts. And if he does that all, 14 holes with the fairway, he could be number 1 in the field in shots gained off the tee. That is a legitimate possibility for Brendan Todd this week on pretty much any other golf course. I mean, he can do it at Sony at YLI Country Club early in the season, but outside of a few niche tracks, he doesn't have that ability. So I love targeting him at these golf courses, particularly when it's on Bermuda grass, which is the surface that he loves. And I mean, over the last 24 measured rounds, the ball striking hasn't been all that bad, right? Just a marginal loser over his last 24. That's a plus for Brendan Todd from the long-term sample size. And over the last 50 measured rounds, you can see he's actually a positive in that category. So, I think there's a little bit more hope here with Brendan Todd than we're used to seeing. And at a golf course that's short, plays directly into his skill set, I'm not going to have many reservations, if any at all, about playing him in my lineups. We'll stop halfway through to give you an idea of what we're looking at in terms of projections. These, of course, everything that is blacked out has everything on it for what you see for all these players, right? So recent form rank for everyone. Obviously, there's my number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 ranked players that are blacked out on the screen here. So if you're looking for access to all of the modeling I have to offer, so recent form rank, my course fit ranking, which is what's right here, total model ranking, shots gained putting on Bermuda grass, everything that I'm using here to research for all my videos to bring you guys these picks, make sure to check out my Patreon page. There is a link down below of the video. It's $10 a month to join, and it is a perfect time to join right now because it is the beginning of the month. If you're familiar with how Patreon does its billing, it's by the month. So when you join here, August 1st, August 2nd, whatever the date may be, you end up getting the most out of it because at the end of the month, then you end up paying for the month afterwards, right? So if you join, at the 20th or like 25th of the month, you might not be getting quite as much out of it, but if you join here early, you're getting the most bang for your buck. So I would highly recommend checking it out. You also get access to my prize picks props, the spreadsheets I do for that in terms of hit rates. You get my showdown projections, access to the community Discord server that I run with, over 100 people at this point, bright-minded individuals that are always willing to share information, always willing to, hear your ideas, be a springboard for anything that you're considering. Definitely something I recommend you check out. So if you're looking for access to everything I have to offer, and I get asked that all the time, how can I see your thoughts on everyone, right? Are you playing this guy? Are you playing that guy? Etc., etc. That is exactly how you get that. But moving on, we've got ourselves Harris English at $7,300. And he obviously was dealing with the injury. When he first came back, actually showed us a little bit of form there. And since then has kind of fallen off the rails. Has had a few missed cuts since, going out there and flashing that upside. So just to give you an idea, he missed the cut at the Rocket Mortgage, missed the cut at the Open Championship, but did make the cut at the Scottish and finished in 42nd. And that was also with a ceiling performance there in those 4 rounds. You had a 19th at the Travelers, which was especially impressive considering it was his second ever start back from the injury, and made the cut at the US Open, a major championship, and his first ever start back from injury. So you're looking at somebody who clearly isn't as far off from form as people expected back from injury. I mean, I really thought he'd struggle a lot more than he has. And though he's missed the cut the last 2 times out, it's not like it was a great course fit for him. And first off, Open Championship. That is kind of the opposite of what I'm looking to play a Harris English at. Even Rocket Mortgage Classic, while I thought it was a little bit of a better course fit, he also missed the cut on the number. He shot -2, right? At most golf tournaments, -2 is getting yourself to the weekend, right? It was a birdie fest out there. -3 ended up being the cut line. It's relatively close to -2 at that, right? Anecdotal doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But Harris English, right, he's been playing a lot better than people want to give him credit for. And the shots gained metrics haven't really reflected that because, even though it's the last 24 measured rounds, which doesn't seem like a massive sample size, we're still pulling stats from right before when he was injured, when he was playing some of the worst golf that we've ever seen. And the reason he went to go get that surgery was because of how bad, how affected his play was. He was not anywhere near to the player that we're even seeing right now, which is a clearly much improved version over that version we saw there towards the fall swing when he was dealing with a lot of the problems here. So off the tee approach is extremely affected by that stretch. So I'm not really looking at that at all. What I care about a lot more is the course history. And again, just what we've seen from the eye test the last 3 to 4 weeks, right? Missing the cut on the number last week. Not all that bad. Top 20 at the Travelers. Made the cut at the US Open. I like to see those sort of things, particularly when you back it up with a top 25 in 2020. He finished in 11th in 2018, and in all 4 trips to this golf course here over the last 5 years has made the cut. 4 of 4. So you like to see that. I think that he's being a little bit underrated with some of the recent form. People are looking into the stats a little bit too much with somebody like a Harris English, especially considering where those stats are coming from, which are, in some cases 4 or 5, maybe even 6 or 7 months ago there for a Harris English. I think you got to give him a little bit of a break. When we get him on Bermuda grass, he's another one of these players that tends to play his best. You can see gaining 0.44 shots gained putting per round. He's relatively long off the tee, but he won't really need to utilize this week. He'll just be able to go out there and hit those mid irons, which, Harris English, maybe not an elite level iron player, but more than serviceable in that category. So if he can go out there, get hot with the putter, do his thing with the irons, just be a little bit above average. I see himself finishing at least in the top 25, if not having the upside to go out there and perhaps crack the top 10, top 5. We've seen that from Harris English. I mean, this guy's won multiple times over the last few years. I think people forget that about Harris English. This guy is more than capable of going out there and legitimately just winning one of these events. He has that type of upside in him. And in large field GPPs, kind of like a Sebastian Munoz, that is the type of upside that I'm looking to target to try and take down a large field contest. Next up, we've got ourselves Rory Sabatini. So will the real Rory please stand up, right? Absolutely love him at this golf course. And let's just hop into it. It's really not that much we need to overthink here. It's relatively straightforward with Rory. He's an absolute course history phenom. You can see he finished top 10 here last year. Missed cut. Okay, whatever. He's a little bit volatile. It's Rory Sabatini, for goodness sakes, not Rory McIlroy. But you're talking about a top 10, which actually was a 6th place finish in 2019 and a 4th place finish in 2017. So he's made 4 or 5 cuts, which is great for somebody here in the 6K range. But you're also looking at somebody that last week ended up playing well. So it's not even just that he's coming in with course history, he's also coming in with form. So first and foremost, where is he at here? Made the cut last week. Before that, was able to make the cut at the John Deere. And while he hasn't played all that much, this is a much better stretch of golf from Rory Sabatini that we've seen from him for quite some time. And really the X factor for him is he's another one of these players that you almost only want to play at a short golf course. I mean, he's really short off the tee at this point. I mean, he's getting up there in age. You had him on the thumbnail. That picture of him with all that hair was from a solid like 15 to 20 years ago, right? He does not look like that anymore. He's a completely different player at this stage. No longer nearly as explosive as he was as a young guy coming out of South Africa at that point. Obviously now he's from Slovakia there with his nationality. So a lot has changed over the years for Rory Sabatini, but the one thing that has definitely remained is the iron play, particularly with those short irons. He is still a rock solid player in that category. And when we've gotten him on Bermuda grass for his career, he's from areas that play on Bermuda grass all the time. He's been his best self. He gains with the putter on those courses. So put him out there, let him be positional off the tee. He's not that long anymore, right? Let him hit some fairways, let him hit some greens, put him on a surface that he prefers. That's been a recipe for success over the years. And really, I don't see that changing, right? He's not that much of a different player than he was last year, right? He's been old for quite some time. He's up there in age, right? It's not like he's, finally getting over the hump when it comes to his pedigree, when it comes to, the wear and tear on his body. He's been there for quite some time, right? He's a wily veteran and has been for quite some time. So I like him there at $6,900. He's not going to pop in your modeling, but if you look at the course history, you get an idea for just how good of a fit he is here. And last week, right, made the cut in his trip before that, right? That's a better stretch of form for Sabatini than you're going to find for most of the times you look to play this guy. I mean, he's been frankly pretty poor for most of this year, but somebody, at this point, at this type of golf course, I think has a legitimate shot to go out there and do something. Next up, we've got ourselves, and lastly, I should say, our last core pick here, or value pick. Core pick down low, whatever you want to call them, right? Still going to be guys I'm using quite a bit in lineups. Going to be Ryan Armour at $6,700. Another short course specialist, right? Relatively straightforward. He's not that long off the tee, but he is damn accurate when he needs to be. A pretty solid approach player, but more than anything, I don't want to say he's a putting specialist because on some of the surfaces like bent grass, POA, he is a loser to the field on those surfaces. But on Bermuda grass, gains 0.42 shots gained putting per round. And this is over a massive sample size. So it's not like it's something due to volatility with Ryan Armour where he's luck sacked into a few good rounds on Bermuda. And that's why his stats are a little bit pumped up. You're looking at over a 100 round sample size. And on top of that, Ryan Armour is a birdie maker, extremely aggressive. You like him in fantasy formats, particularly if he could just make the cut because he's liable to make 20 to 25 birdies. And over the last few events, he's done exactly that. He has well outpaced his fantasy, with his fantasy fantasy points with his fantasy finishing position. He's done much better in terms of birdies than a lot of the other players around him, and it's because of that volatility. So first off, let's look at the course history, which, isn't anything insane, right? He missed the cut last time out, but before that, it was great. 25th in 2020, another top 25 in 2019, a top 10 in 2018 and 2017. So much like a few of the other players before, that I'm hoping that a missed cut last time out might keep a few people off of him. Ryan Armour definitely fits that same description. I mean, even Rory Sabatini missing the cut 2 times ago, right, might keep people a little bit off of him. But, over a long-term sample size, he's absolutely killed it at this place, right? So I'm not worried about it whatsoever. The course fit makes perfect sense with how positional he is, also with the putting ability on Bermuda grass. And over his last 24 measured rounds, he really hasn't been all that bad. I mean, first off, let's look at Sabatini here just to give you an idea. It hasn't been all that pretty, right? Like I mentioned, you're talking about somebody who's coming in with shaky form at the very best. Where's good old Sabatini here? Am I overlooking him? There he is. I'm blind, guys. You can see he's gaining in every category but approach. It's actually not that bad. I thought it would be a little bit worse than that. We go down near Ryan Armour, though. You can see legitimate, reasons to play him. Gaining tee to green in every single category. The putter hasn't been all that good, like I said. Again, we've been on bent grass, which is far from his preferred surface. But on Bermuda grass, over the long-term sample size, is an absolute just banshee, just makes birdies in bunches. So we can go out there, we gain tee to green like we have over our last 24 measured rounds, which has been far from ideal. I'll show you guys, right? In terms of his recent finishes, they haven't really been there, right? Missed cut, 25th, 35th, right? You'd expect the guy's shots gain metrics to look horrible. He's been missing cuts like on the number, right? So, Ryan Armour, probably getting misjudged by a lot of the public, at least the box score watchers that see all those missed cuts and won't look into the shots gained metrics, because if he just continues to play like that, which has resulted in missed cuts and then putts to his baseline here on Bermuda grass, you're talking about like a top 25 finish this week, let alone if he improves on that, right? Which is what we're hoping for in these large field GPPs. Guys, that is all I've got for the value picks. Before you hop on out of here, go ahead and comment down below who your favorite value $8,000 and below on DraftKings is. And as per usual, make sure you go ahead and smash that like button too. It lets me know that you're enjoying the content, want to see even more of it in the future, and also helps the algorithm pump it out there to more people. So I'd appreciate that if you guys go ahead and smash that. But outside of that, guys, that is all I've got here. We're going to have even more videos throughout the week, though, so look forward to my fades and sleepers tomorrow morning. That'll be covering the 3 most overhyped and overlooked plays of the week. We'll also have our weekly DFS live stream tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Every Wednesday, we go through the weather. We go through a lot of the DFS strategy talk for that week. Your live Q&A, that'll be a huge portion of that live stream. In general, just everything you need to know, right before lock there on Wednesday night to get ready to make your lineups, right? There's going to be weather impacts. There could be some stacking that needs to be done if there's going to be a huge split between the 2 waves. There could be some strategy talk, some guys that are getting super chalky there on Wednesday that might have been even core picks for me before, then I end up fading. Just a lot can change between now and Wednesday night. So make sure to stop on by for that. There will be a link in the description of this video to that. So you guys can go ahead, set a reminder to it, make sure that you don't miss it there on Wednesday. But again, that is at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Until then, guys, best of luck with all of your lineups. I look forward to seeing all of you at the live stream, and I'll catch you guys next time.